My name is Dominique Kennedy, and I tell stories about conversations. Welcome to the Word Equity Conversation series. So, I'm going to tell you a story about a conversation that I had with my mother. So, we're preparing for the holidays, deciding how we want this whole season to look as it relates to spending time with my husband's side of the family, spending time with my side of the family, making sure the children are able to experience and share time with their grandparents. So if you're married, you may relate to the whole decision making around how you're going to spend time and what you want that to look like and how much time you're going to spend in each place and if you're going to go to each place or if you're going to fit in a trip this time and then circle back another time with the other side of the family. So it's a whole thing around how you want the holidays to look and how people feel embraced at this particular time. So we were initially planning to spend a certain amount of time in one location and then spending planning to spend a different amount of time in another location. We had to shift some things because schedules change and responsibilities change and obligations are in place no matter what you have going on. So we decided to modify, abbreviate our time um, as far as our holiday time. So, of course, that didn't sit well with my mother. And it's not that it didn't sit well, it was more so that she was looking forward to spending that time in a particular way because we had it set and it was the way that we had discussed it and there was the expectation that was set. And it's understandable because that's what we discussed and that's how we planned it. The shift was closer to the time that we were planning to leave versus weeks and weeks, months and months ahead of time. So, understandably so, people prepare their minds in a way where they set an expectation and they look forward to that expectation being fulfilled. So, rightfully so. So, we had this conversation where I had to share with my mom that we were going to adjust the time. And initially, there was a level of disappointment. I had to acknowledge, and this is where there's power in active listening and empathy because I made a decision to acknowledge where she was and how she felt about the experience rather than going down the list of things or going down the list of contributing factors and, making it as if the feelings that were expressed were not valid and really just trying to uh, dissuade her from feeling the way she felt. So I chose to acknowledge where she was. I chose to acknowledge that, hey, this wasn't planned, it wasn't expected, um, but I respect how you feel and I understand some of the things that may contribute to why you feel the way you do. So we left it there because I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. I pretty much set in place what was going to happen, acknowledged, and then decided to revisit the conversation if we needed to. So decided to give it a bit of time, give it a couple of days, just let everybody settle. And when I circled back, I decided to not only acknowledge some of the things and points that were made in the first conversation, but also make sure I added clarity and sought out to seek understanding in this exchange, in this time of speaking with my mom, because I was like, I don't want to leave things in a place where it feels undone or, I want to make sure that I at least spoke to the thing that needed to be spoken to so that as we get to our time together, we can fully immerse ourselves in that time and not be thinking about all the things that happened prior to. It wasn't a unmanageable experience. It's just I like to approach things in a way where I feel like everything that needed to be said was said. So, in circling back in this conversation with my mom, I let her know, hey, I acknowledge that that wasn't news that was expected or something that you didn't plan for, but I did want you to know that we acknowledge that that was not something that you would necessarily feel good about because we didn't feel good about the change either. I also made sure that instead of pointing out, well, you said this, you said that, and you should feel this, you should feel that, instead of assigning feelings, I made sure I did seek to kind of go down a few different points that were shared. So, what I didn't say in this particular conversation is that after we conversed the first time, there was a text message exchange, just a short one, nothing crazy, nothing just, out of the ordinary, just an acknowledgement of feelings and also an expression of just love, like, hey, I'm really looking forward to the time, really love you all. And but in the text message, I wanted to make sure I addressed a couple of things so that there was clarity about the timeline and there was clarity about how we approach time with family versus how it may present. So I made sure in this very even tone, very natural way, organically allowed the conversation to unfold the second time that we spoke, but still made took intentional time to address, hey, I noticed in our text message exchange that you noted this. And I wanted to make sure I clarified, hey, this is the time frame. So I know that it may have been calculated a certain way, but I want to make sure I add clarity to the fact that this is what it's going to look like. So that was something we were able to address. And then there was another comment that was made about what can be perceived of how our experience would look, um, being that the trip was going to be abbreviated. We didn't have like set out like itinerary plans because I'm like a planner. So is my mother. We just really decided to just leave the time kind of free flowing. We had a couple of things we wanted to do that were prepared or were ready to be done, but nothing that had to be like this, minute to minute itinerary. But I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged, hey, it sounds like based on the abbreviated timeline that your perception of our experience may be this. But I wanted to make sure you understood that our experience is our experience no matter what time in the calendar year we spend it, how long we're able to spend it, how much time we spend with each person. We're going to make it a meaningful experience no matter what. So was able to acknowledge that and just really thinking about how to add clarity, how to acknowledge without causing any unnecessary conflict or causing any unnecessary misunderstanding. So it was really important to acknowledge, and it was really important to be intentional about pointing out a couple of things in the conversation and really making sure that we kind of sifted through the things that needed to be said prior to the actual experience of being together. So really want to make sure that when you're having your exchanges, you think deeply about what you feel needs to be acknowledged and how you intentionally lay out the points that you want to share so that there's clarity, there's understanding, there is acknowledgement, and everyone feels like they had an opportunity to state where they are, state where they feel, you know, further add clarity to the experience that can be had, and then you can just kind of jump right into what you actually want to get to, which is actually spending time together, meaningful time, making connections, deepening your connection.